Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. I get to have the pleasure of bringing on some experts who are doing some amazing work with around domestic violence. And this month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And here at Converge, it's really important for us to bring experts on the line so you guys can hear some of the remarkable programs and initiatives that are happening around domestic violence. Joining me today is Caroline with the King County Prosecutor's Office and Miss Doris with the YWCA. They have an amazing partnership going on around domestic violence. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us.
us.
Absolutely. Well, Miss Doris, I'll start with you here so you can kind of give us a little bit of background about what Survivors First is all about. And I know FIRST is an acronym, so maybe you can explain that to the audience.
Okay, great. Thank you. Survivors First, and FIRST is an acronym. It stands for Facilitating Information Referral for Survivors of Trauma. And the Survivors First it came into a broader piece when we work with survivors of African American survivors. And as we were working with them, we asked, what are some of their barriers? And what we found was some of the barriers were criminal history. And so then we would ask the question of what happened. And when we asked what happened, then they would say, well, I got in a fight with my boyfriend and the police was called and I was taken to jail and I was arrested and taken to jail. And my attorney told me to plead guilty if I wanted to get out because I'd never been in jail before. So I wanted to get out. I had to go back to work. I had to get to my children. So I pled guilty. And with not understanding that criminal history will stay on their records for a very long time. So we started seeing that happening more and more. So I previously worked for the King County Prosecutor's Office and had a great relationship with David Martin. And we would talk about cases when folks would go to jail. I would call them up and ask them, is there any way this is a survivor? And he would look deeper into it. And so we think about that there are services for mental health, there are services for chemical dependency, and there's even batter's treatment program. But there was no services for survivors of victim defendant, survivor defendant, and specifically for our African American survivors. And so we talked about it for a while. We got funding for 2019. And what the prosecutor, and I'll let Caroline talk more on that, but once the referrals came to us, we would reach out to the survivor. And many African American survivors don't even know about DV services. They don't even know about advocacy, right? And so we would reach out to them and try to determine what the barriers were. And determine what the barriers were. Oh, my dog is killing me. And at that time, we would try to, assess. They might need housing. They might need the car repair. They might just need somebody to believe them, someone in the chair that looks like them. And so I'm getting distracted because my dog is barking, but can I just...
Well, no, I mean, I think that what you've done is you've laid a great foundation, right? I mean,
Okay.
Clearly there was a void here in the system.
Yeah.
And, you being there in that very, I think, unique position to see how these survivors were being treated on the other side really is beneficial then to bring it all together. Caroline, I'll come right to you around, what it is that the prosecutor's office does. Because I know this is a partnership with the YWCA, King County Prosecutor's Office, and King County in general. So let's talk a little bit more about how you guys are involved in this project.
Thanks. So Doris is right. I mean, this really came from the Y's incredible advocacy in the community and working with survivors and recognizing that real need to engage with domestic violence survivors in a different way. A big problem is that we have rates of incarceration for women who are experiencing abuse at very high levels. The folks who are in prison, women who are in prison, between 71 and 90% of them have experienced some kind of gender-based violence prior to becoming incarcerated. So it really begs the question, what are we doing for these folks who have survived this trauma and then who are re-entering the criminal justice system as defendants? What can we do as prosecutors to take a second look and figure out if criminal charges are really appropriate or if there's some other way to handle the case?
Yeah, I mean, this is necessary right now. And what you guys are doing is so important, not just, or obviously so far beyond Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but I think even more now when we actually utilize this month to spotlight programs like what you guys are doing and the ways that you guys are really caring for the victims. Miss Doris, you know, when you talk about being in that unique position and seeing a need for this, how has it been? You know, you guys got the funding 2019. So you guys now maybe a couple years under your belt. How has it been in terms of the response that the survivors are receiving from this initiative and this approach that you guys are taking?
Well, to be honest, it hasn't been an easy sell. Because we call survivors up when we're like, hey, we're from the YWCA and we want to support you. Oh my goodness. We want to support you. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Give me one.
Well, I'll come to you, Caroline. Well, while Miss Doris deals with the dog, I know it's not easy, but I think that, you know, as she was just kind of describing a little bit there, that it's a little bit tough. Is that something that you're also seeing from the prosecutor side?
It can be challenging to engage with survivors who are, you know, who have not had any trust or any reason to trust the criminal justice system and the law enforcement people that they're interacting with.
Sorry.
A lot of what Doris and I want to try to do is also work with police officers to talk about how to handle situations differently so that they're really slowing down in their response and being able to engage with survivors on scene before they're ever arrested in a different way. You know, a frequent scenario that comes up that Doris and I see often is when there's some kind of mutual violence situation between people and a survivor has been strangled. And perhaps in reacting in self-defense, she reaches out, she hits, scratches, does something to her abuser. When the police arrive, they see visible scratch marks on the male party, but they don't see anything on the woman who has called 911. Oftentimes, strangulation does not leave any marks, and that's even more true when we're talking about survivors of color. So those injuries can be internal and can be hard for police to see. And so they end up arresting the survivor, even though she is saying that she has been strangled, because they see visible scratch marks on the abuser. So that's where prosecutors can take that second look and see what's truly going on, what's the history here. We bring in our knowledge of prosecuting strangulation cases and say, we really think the right thing here is to dismiss these charges for the fingernail scratches against the abuser and to potentially prosecute the abuser for that strangulation.
Yeah, and I can understand how that can pose some type of difficulty. Kind of jumping back to where you were going, Miss Doris, there,
Yes.
in terms of it being a tough sell, right? Because oftentimes I know that there is also a stigma around people who are in these types of domestic violence situations, that a lot of the times the person that is receiving the abuse is trying to figure out a way to not necessarily go through the criminal justice system, correct?
Right. And when 911 is called, a lot of survivors believe that when law enforcement come out, that they're going to be safe, and they're calling because they are the ones that are being abused. And so, you know, once they go through being arrested, going to jail, it's really traumatizing for survivors that we work with. And some of the things that we've gotten feedback when we have called up survivors and said, hey, you know, we're here for you. We want to support you. And like, nobody ever called before. I didn't know anything about no DV services. You know, what's the catch? Are you working for the prosecutor's office? Are you, you know, they're questioning what our motive is. And so then when we say this program was developed specifically with you in mind to provide support and option and empowerment to help you not have to divert you from going back down that road of ever having to go to jail again. And I have a success story I would love to share with you. And it was a survivor with 3 children. And with those 3 children, she was with her children's father. They had been abused for over 5 years, and she had wanted to leave, but with all of the trauma and the abuser, you got 3 kids, nobody's gonna want you, nobody's gonna believe you. She really believed that. And then he was the breadwinner of bringing in, the money into the house. And so she tolerated it. She dealt with it and just did what she could do to keep herself safe. And then one night they got into it and she was at her wits. And so she kicked in the door to when fighting with the abuser. So police was called out. She stated that she was arrested in front of her children. They wouldn't even let her call someone to go get her children. Although her abusive partner was upstairs, they still wouldn't, they told him to go get the kid. They took her to jail. And because as women of color, specifically African American survivors and Black women, we talk with our hands sometimes. Going to jail for the first time is traumatizing within itself. You're not treated nice in jail. Because she was hysterical and crying, they put her in the mental health room, the padded room, took off all of her clothes. She sat naked in the cell all night long until the next day. The dignity of that I think that hurt her more than anything. And so she was charged with a felony and she got out and she made contact with one of my other advocates. And we understood that she had been charged, so we contacted the prosecutor's office. They looked into the victimization of this survivor, and they realized that she was definitely a victim. At the end of the day, they dismissed this felony case. I had the pleasure of calling her and telling her that the charges had been dismissed, and all I could hear through the phone was her just, oh my God. And so with that, we were able to place her in an emergency hotel. From the hotel, she entered into our transitional housing program. During that time, we heard her say, I haven't felt this safe in so long. I haven't had the support of people that look like me in the seat and really showing me that they care. That was a big one for her. Her children started striving. They were happy. She did mental health counseling. I think she enrolled in school and was just striving. We were able to help her move on to permanent housing. I spoke with her the other day and she has a job now. She's not dependent on her abuser for financial assistance anymore. And just seeing her, I had a chance to work with her a lot at the time because we had just started the program. And so that success story sits with me all the time. But think of what she went through to get to that point. And as they say, once the cuff goes on, life is never the same for a survivor. So they're being re-traumatized all over again.
I mean, that is a beautiful story. And for me, it really puts so much of what you guys are doing in a personal perspective, right? Because for people that may be watching this, that may have, dealt with this kind of domestic violence trauma, I think it's really important that they understand this program is designed for them. And what an amazing story to tell, Ms. Doris, so that we can really get the full breadth of how this program plays out. My next question for you, Caroline, is, this is a unique partnership, and I want to be able to give that partnership a little bit more understanding for our people out here. In your time at the prosecutor's office, have you ever seen something like this that is so, I think, community centric and really focused on the people that it's meant to serve?
I think this is unique, especially in terms of working with gender-based violence victims. They're really, as far as we know, there's no other program like it that's doing this kind of work. And it's really trying to strip away those labels and recognize that someone who has been through trauma and has been a victim can end up being charged with criminal offenses later on that are either justified or not. And even sometimes when they are justified, perhaps traditional prosecution is not the right way to deal with it. We need to recognize sort of what the root of the problem is and actually dismiss or decline the case and send it to the Y for community services. And our program has really expanded because previously, from 2019 through June of this year, our funding was through the Victim of Crime Act, and we could only work with cases that were pre-filing, so before the prosecutor's office or any municipal jurisdiction filed criminal charges. But thanks to the work of the Washington State Legislature and funding that we received from them, starting July 1st of this year, we were really able to expand the program, reach more people even after criminal charges have been filed. And they also funded a part-time position here at the prosecutor's office to help build out the program, with most of the funding going directly to the Y for providing those services. So thanks to that funding, we've been able to expand eligibility for the program, and we've also been able to expand our volume pretty significantly. In the first 2.5 years of the program, we processed 144 cases, which is an average of about 4.8 cases per month. Now in the first 3 months, first 3 complete months that we've had funding for this program, we've been able to do 35, which works out to 11.7 cases per month. So we've more than doubled the number of people that we are able to reach and serve, and we hope to build that out further.
Yeah.
Well, I just really appreciate that, you sharing that, because I think, for people to understand that this is a safe program, right? And that really the partnership that you all are doing is providing that safe space. I think it's important that expansion happens, so more and more survivors are being met with, the proper charges or dropping charges, right? In these cases. And I think that the more that this rolls out, the more people are going to be like, nah, man, this is the right program for me. Maybe knowing and hearing other stories, sometimes the gestation period of a program like this takes on something that's very specific and unique to all of the people that would be benefiting from the program. And so I just love hearing that, because the more people you guys are helping, the more people are out there that have these stories, as Ms. Doris shared earlier, that then make people go, you know what, I feel more comfortable making sure I go this direction. And they understand that it's really there for them. I mean, you just said something, Caroline, that I think really strikes me here too, is that this is maybe the first type of partnership that you know of. And I know it's throughout King County. What can you guys do in terms of really showcasing this as a model for other counties in the state to be able to adopt? I'll let either one of you answer that. I'm not sure what can be done, but maybe there's something that can be showing to other counties this is a working program.
Well, we are definitely working on that. We are, right now it is through the prosecutor's office, but Caroline and I and Dave, we've really been working to expand it and inform and train other municipalities so that they can take a second look at these cases also. It is important. And one thing I want to point out with this project was considering the disproportionality of how many African-American women and women of color are in our prison system. This program was specifically for African-American survivors. And it's been amazing, not amazing, because it's not a good thing to see survivors come through our doors, but it is a good thing because they can get the support that they need and they can leave these abusive relationships. And as we're trying to expand it in our community, because they can do, if they contact us directly, we can find out where the case is. If they've been charged, we immediately contact Caroline. We're trying to get all the other municipalities, Renton, Kent, Federal, all these other little smaller courts to, take a look at these cases and really look at the victimization, because this one person has gotten arrested, but her abusive partner has been arrested many times for abusing her. But now here she is a defendant. And it really irked me a lot because we didn't have, once they are in the system, they can't work with the court advocate. Not at one time, community advocates, community program wouldn't work with a victim defendant. And so it was very important that, we have people in the seat that look like the people we are serving. It was very important that we, be there and look at the big picture, a holistic picture of what is the root causes, what is going on, what does it take to support this survivor, empowering her and taking back her power to live her best life.
Yeah, that's so important. And thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, this has really been enlightening for me. I really appreciate you guys coming on today to shed light on this phenomenal program. And kudos to everybody that is involved. It is so necessary and so needed. I really thank you both for sharing this. Now, if people want to learn more or dive in, maybe there's folks that want to volunteer or folks that need this service, how do they get in contact with this program?
Our website is set up YWCA Works, YWCAWRKS .org. And if they go onto our site, they can get all the information they need about Survivors First and other advocacy programs, because not only do we have Survivors First, we have a CSC program where we work with women in human trafficking. We have legal advocate. We have community advocates. We have a child youth advocate. We have a sexual assault advocate. We have a DV transitional housing program. We have DV transitional housing program. We have the Next Step program, where it's emergency housing for survivors that are in imminent danger, fleeing from imminent danger. I think I named off everything. And so we have a majority of services, and sometimes a survivor may utilize more Survivors First, but they also need legal advocacy. They also need community advocacy. And so it's a wraparound piece, but the piece that our program offers that others don't is that we have people in the seat that look like them. And we're culturally competent and trauma informed, and we provide trauma informed advocacy, because we're talking about trauma, but we're also talking about the Black woman and how, she can take better care of herself, going to the doctor, going to the dentist, all of those things that make us whole, right? And so it's been pretty exciting, I have to say, and to see the cases coming in. It's unfortunate, but I'm so glad that we're here to receive them and to support survivors moving forward.
Yeah, it's so necessary. Thank you guys so much again. This has been enlightening, I'm sure, for the audience. And as you guys can hear right there from Miss Doris and Caroline, this program is one of a kind, very unique, but it's very specific to be helping survivors of domestic violence. If anyone you know out there is struggling to, deal with a domestic violence situation, please reach out to YWCA. You got the information right there, YWCAworks.org, so that you guys can help that person along the way and get them connected to services that are directly there to benefit them. Thank you so much for listening, y'all.